Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thanks very much for attending. My name is Tom DeCord, and I am the director of EdTech Teacher. So EdTech Teacher is a professional learning organization. We are comprised of former and current classroom teachers, and we travel to schools and districts across the country and occasionally overseas to administer workshops and presentations. We also offer International iPad Summit, which is run at Harvard and Boston at the Heinz Center in the fall, and in San Diego in a few weeks at their convention center during the winter. And we also run a series of 2- and 3-day workshops in 6 cities across the US throughout this summer. My personal background is as a high school history teacher. I taught in American international schools overseas right after college, went back to my native Quebec. I was born and raised in Montreal, taught at my old high school. I've been in the Boston area for about 18 years, became a US citizen about 9 years ago. For 10 years, I taught at a school outside of Boston, and in 1999, that school purchased tangerine-colored clamshells that people were calling iBooks, if you recall those. And I was part of an experimental one-to-one program for the next 7 years. In 1999, if you said, hey, what do you think of one-to-one? They would kind of look at you, what's one-to-one? What's a laptop classroom? So as you might imagine, I made a lot of mistakes as I started to develop some instructional practices and then eventually a pedagogical framework. Our fundamental goal is to help teachers, help schools, help districts on incorporating technology purposefully. One of the benefits of my position is that I get to travel to different schools, I get to visit different districts, I get to see teachers, I get to talk with them, and I get a sense of some of the great things that teachers are doing in their classrooms. So what I'm going to share to you are 3 characteristics, commonalities of what great teachers are doing with iPads. And I'll illustrate them with examples and some stories. Then I'm going to offer some insights, some ideas on how do we build great teachers with iPads. How do we shape a vision and then align instructional practice so that we attain that vision? So let's begin. The first and probably the most important characteristics of what great teachers do with iPads is they empower student creativity. They unleash a creative process in which students can address problems, tackle challenges, come up with innovative educational content that demonstrates their knowledge, their understanding, and their mastery of content. So join with me in a couple of minutes, and you decide if that's the case here.
And the ideas of socialism, or the ideas of capitalism and the radical version of socialism, Marxism, or it even could turn into a debate between capitalism and communism, which derived from Marxism. Although these philosophers varied greatly in their ideas and philosophies, without them the Industrial Revolution would not have been what it is, and it would not have the effect today without them. Adam Smith. Adam Smith was born on June 17, 1723 in Scotland. He was a professor at the University of Glasgow, and he wrote the book, The Wealth of Nations. In this book, he defended the ideas of a free market, free economy, and the 3 natural laws. Smith was a firm believer in laissez-faire economics, and he also thought that economic liberty would result in economic progress. At the core of Adam Smith's laissez-faire capitalist philosophies lies the 3 natural laws of economics. Law 1 is the law of self-interest. Law number 2 is the law of competition. And law number 3 is the law of supply and demand. Law number 1 of Smith's natural laws is the law of self-interest. This question is asked almost every day by most people around the world. The question is, why work? Why spend 8 to 12 hours every day working? The answer for most people is you or your family. Why do you go to school? To get an education, which will most likely lead to a better life, with more money, more food, and more luxuries such as vacations, electronics, and a better house for you and your family. Law number 2 of Smith's natural laws is the law of competition. A small family-owned shop opens up on a street with some other surrounding small shops around it. Unlike the other shops, this one sells dressers. We will call this store store number 1. Store 1 has 1 worker, and they can make 1 dresser in the average of 3 months. So in January, a customer comes and takes away the dresser. Another customer comes and they order another dresser. And in April, the customer comes back and takes their dresser that they ordered. Business is going great for store number 1. However, in May, another store selling the same dressers opens up just down the street. We will call this store store number 2. In July, store number 2 releases a dresser while store number 1 is still out of stock. Store number 2 continues to make dressers, and instead of waiting, 1 customer comes and takes them all at once. This causes store number 1 to make a better product. This causes store number 2 to make a better product, and they keep enhancing their products as the need for business increases. This turns into something like a game for the businesses. One store releases a product, the next store tops that, and the next store tops that. The more businesses there are, the more competition is created. Ultimately, this competition creates a better product. Law number...
Would you say that she knows and understands her content? Can she communicate that knowledge and understanding effectively? And does she do it in a way that engages you and you might be tempted to watch more? Absolutely. So, Sean McCusker, 2 years ago in a pilot program at his public school in Chicago, knew that this student was talented but did not excel in traditional assessments. During the Socratic method in class, she was very shy and she wouldn't contribute. And in traditional print-based assessments, often she did not rise to her capabilities. So one day, Sean decided he was going to give kids various options in ways in which they could demonstrate to him that they knew and understand and perhaps even mastered the content. Now, when she was about to show her presentation to the class, it was going to be up on the screen. She got so nervous she left the room. She feigned that she had to go to the bathroom. So they played the 12-minute video tutorial. She comes back, and the kids give her a rousing standing ovation. So Sean gives kids the opportunity, if they wish, to publish their work to a broader audience. She said yes. So Sean puts it on YouTube, and the hits start to come. At first in the hundreds, and then there's the thousands. So she comes to Sean and she says, you know that project I was working on? Can I work on it some more? Can I make it better? Just like kids are always coming up to us and saying, can I write another essay? So she starts working on it some more, does some more research, polishes it. It goes up online again, and the hits start coming, and the hits start coming, and the hits start coming. Now, I'm not going to have you all do this at once, but if you went and Googled Adam Smith, Karl Marx, guess who often shows up number 1? She's the most popular online source for Adam Smith and Karl Marx. It does waver at times. She might be 3 some days, but she generally beats Wikipedia, beats Library of Congress, beats all of these established sources with huge amounts of traffic, this 15-year-old girl. Did you know that many of the world's leading astrophysicists are dyslexic? So they have weak central vision. They have very strong peripheral vision, so one of the core competencies of being an astrophysicist is detect patterns in wavelengths. They do that well. But you put some pros in front of them, and they look at it, and they struggle. So these highly functioning, highly capable, professional, and in most cases, highly intellectual individuals, when they were in our classrooms, what would we call them? Right, slow, special ed, difficult, troublesome. So Sean understands the most powerful use of technology is to reach all learners. We now have these multiple pathways that kids can express what they know and they understand and what they've mastered. They can do it on paper, but they could also do it through a video, through animation, through audio, through a picture story, through a multimedia book. There are all of these pathways for our students to demonstrate to us what they know and understand. But then you think of traditional assessment, and it's largely print disabled. Notice the astrophysicist is not disabled, but the instructional and the assessment methods are often print disabled, as they're often 99% dissemination of print and reception of print in terms of assessment. So what are we doing to use technology to reach all learners to create multiple pathways? And in doing so, we might even engage them so that they're coming up to you and saying, can I do more? Can I work on that again? Can I have more time for that? All right, second example. This is not technology, but this is also Sean's class. This is a student who decided that she could demonstrate her knowledge by paper mache heads. So she studies the industrial philosophers. She ends up creating essentially paper mache heads out of them. See what's coming out of their mouth? Those are all sayings. Now this is just a small portion. This was in the room. It went out the hallways. Got to the point where her parent called Sean and said, please make her stop. So for Sean, it's not technology creativity. No, it's anything can be creativity. It can be that creative prose. It could be that creative making of paper mache heads of industrial philosophers. It can be, it's all learning. It's all learning. And I will use everything at my disposal to ensure that I reach all learners and every student has an opportunity to demonstrate what they know, what they've understand, and hopefully what they've mastered. All right, another example, still Chicago. Now, do you want to learn about the food chain? I do, and that's the whole point. So Autumn Laidler works in urban Chicago, and she and her cohort of teachers at the elementary and at the middle school level are trying to engage a populace in deep reflection and deep understanding of content, but they know they often need a hook. So what Autumn and her cohorts were thinking is, how can we engage a few of these students to create a multimedia presentation that might prompt their students to want to know more about the food chain? So she challenged them to do this, and this is what they came up with. Now, the technology behind this in some ways is relatively simple. It's iMovie, and it's with an iMovie template, and hence all the music and the special effects are built in. But, as both Sean and Autumn will tell you, the multimedia only reflects the proverbial tip of the iceberg. In other words, if you ask that student who created the Karl Marx and Adam Smith video about Karl Marx and Adam Smith, Sean will tell you she can quote them verbatim. Like she knows, she spent so much time reading Marx, so much time analyzing, basically analyzing the text, spent so much time planning this video tutorial, that final product that you see of the multimedia is only a tiny reflection of all the serious academic interaction that went on in this project. And the same thing, though it's deceptive, for the iMovie. The kids had to make a lot of decisions on content. What do we leave in? What do we leave out? What's the connection between the images? And which images have priority and which do not have priority? A storyboarding process is undertaken where kids basically have to explain, essentially scene or frame by frame, what's the message here, what's the purpose, how does the music convey it, how do the images convey it, how does the text convey it. So all of that is part of a thinking process that's not visible in the summative assessment. It's not visible in that final video. It's not visible, but it's visible in the formative assessment when the teacher's collecting all this information from the students about how they're going about and creating this final project. So essentially, the process becomes more important than the product because the process leads you to uncover the visible thinking. All the critical thinking decisions that are going on in making that Adam Smith Karl Marx video or making the food chain video. All right, so number 2, great teachers connect learners. So I had a chance to chat with Kristen Piano. She's at the Avenue School in New York. And she and a group of elementary school teachers decided to create a global book series. And a little video is going to run in a second with no sound, and I'll just narrate. So they use a multimedia book app called Book Creator, which is fairly intuitive. And they made a call through social media to ask other schools if they would contribute perhaps 2 pages that would tell a little bit about their school and a little bit about their area. We're now at Johnny in Chicago at this point.
And I live in Chicago, and this is the best city in the whole wide world.
So there's Johnny. He's telling you a little bit about the Willis Tower. It used to be the Sears Tower. Then we flip the page. We have a kindergarten student and from Ohio, and I think you'll be able to guess.
H-I-O. Go Ohio!
So sorry, Florida, you're not number 1. So as I flip through there, I mean, this is Olga. Olga is an elementary teacher in Russia. She's a place called Yoshkar Ola. I have no idea where Yoshkar Ola is. But you have all these pictures, and you're learning about this person in Russia and about her city. So I kind of flip through, and you got Arkansas. I mean, basically, you've got, I don't know if all the states are represented, but you've got multiple states represented. You've got multiple countries represented. Canada's in here several times. Mexico. That's England, Ipswich, England, right there. And as I flip here, there's Canada. That is Alberta, Canada. And they added some music. This is New Zealand. Wellington, New Zealand. They included a little video here as part of their book.
Hi, we are from room 15 at Taiwan Intermediate in New Zealand. Welcome to Wheat and Windy Wellington. We hope you enjoy it.
Let's go see some wonderful creations and landmarks. No photos and no touching, please.
Wellington has the biggest museum in New Zealand. It's called Te Papa.
We also have the Beehive. The Beehive is New Zealand's parliament.
So you're learning about the Beehive, you're learning about Te Papa. They're giving you sort of a historical, cultural tour of New Zealand. So stop and think for a second about how this process might redefine instruction and interaction in a classroom. In many geography classes, such as this one, and such as mine, because my social studies class, often it was kids, go to this page in the textbook, look at this map, and I want you to memorize these locations. Now, at the elementary level, there still is a lot of fundamental outline map, put in the capitals, put in these countries, yes. But one of the fascinating things that happened that Kristen pointed out is kids started to ask questions. Where's Johnny's train? Can you show me how Johnny gets from his home to his... Could we look at a map so I could understand that? Where's Russia? Could you point out on this map where Russia is? The kids started asking questions because they wanted to learn about geography. So while still some of the curriculum was still teacher-centric dissemination, here, open the textbook and I want you to, hey, memorize these places. Part of it was now driven by the kids' questions, the kids' engagement, the kids' curiosity. So some of the curriculum content now took a detour. As the teachers started following, okay, Russia, let me teach you about Russia. Let's look at Russia. Let's find Yoshkar Ola. What other questions do you have? So they started to move from a simple substitution, whereas technology is used simply as a replacement for the textbook or replacement for the maps, to a situation where kids were assuming a little bit more ownership of the instructional process because of their inquiry-based curiosity about that content. So this is Dan Bowden. He taught middle school a few years ago in Oregon. And like many middle school textbooks, or math textbooks, I would say, math textbooks, a lot of them are obtuse. And the language is rather formal, and it can be difficult for kids to understand. So here's a situation where you've got basically 6th graders trying to solve one-step equations. And so they get to the chapter on one-step equations, and the kids don't get it. Kids don't understand. And then Dan's thinking, well, what am I going to do going forward if I got a textbook and kids don't understand? So he was able to teach them through video and got sort of like teaching, tutoring help. And he said, why don't I have kids create multimedia books that explain how to solve one-step equations. So as you'll see, there's handwritten notes that kids took pictures of because they were working in pen and paper for the most part. So they took pictures of those notes, they brought them in. You'll see a lot of play buttons. Those are little tutorials where kids will explain how to solve a one-step equation. Or it'll be a speaker icon where they're just explaining their notes because they can record directly into the pages. So you have the handwritten notes, you've got typed notes, you've got the kid's voice being recorded, you have them inserting some video tutorials that they have created about how to solve math problems. So what could a teacher do with this with next year's group when they come to one-step equations? The students could be teaching them. Again, redefining, moving beyond a simple substitution to redefining the way that kids engage with curriculum content, the way that kids learn, but as I pointed out, number 2, the way that we can connect learners. Connect learners. And hey, I can point up all sorts of examples. Kathy Cassidy from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, who has all of her 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds creating content online, putting them on a blog so that parents can come and see their kids' work, and they have a window into that classroom. Christine Wydeen in Windsor, Ontario, who is using Twitter along with her kindergarten class, and also a global community book to connect with classrooms around the world. So there's amazing things going on in connection, using social media, even at young ages, so that kids can publish their work, others can view it, and it can be a benefit to everyone involved. The third characteristic is make learning last. And this is both a professional and a personal story, but I'll show you the clip first.
今日肉弁当を作りましょう。
肉弁当。
材料生姜1かけ、醤油大さじ2、酒大さじ4、
豚肉200 グラム、水大さじ。
All right, can you figure out what the kids are doing, what the assignment was? Teach Japanese vocabulary. So this is higher level Japanese. I forget if this is the AP class. Tomoko Graham, the teacher, most days would come in and say, hey kids, here's a bunch of verbs you have to learn. Here's vocabulary you got to learn. Open up the textbook, look at the reader. And one day she comes in and she kind of like drops down this vocabulary and says, make a movie or something and teach yourself. Now my stepdaughter, my younger stepdaughter, was in the class. Caveat, this is not an iPad activity, this is an iPod activity. This was actually done 7 years ago, but is perfect application to iPads. It was a handheld device. So this is the deal. Olivia comes home from school one day, And she's in the kitchen. Okay, no big deal. She's got an iPod. All right, iPod in the kitchen. But then I'm hearing all sorts of noise. There's clanging, there's stuff going on, like what the? So I go into the kitchen, and what is she doing? She's pulling down ingredients, and she's making a meal. What's she looking at? That. She's learning how to cook the meal. And part of the assignment was you had to cook it for someone. Public service. Guess who ate the meal? So I get an email from Tomoko. Hey, how was the meal? Interesting form of summative assessment, right? How was the meal? It was great, thanks very much. So in order for Olivia to cook the meal and complete the assignment by serving it to her parent, and her parent being able to, for the summative assessment, say, yes, it was very good, she basically passed, she had to learn from the other students. So what they did is they decided to do these Iron Chef parodies, and they broke up in small groups because they realized that all of the vocabulary had to do with cooking. All right, now I want you to fast forward 7 years ago to a few months ago. So Olivia's back from Japan. So she taught English in northern Japan. She's back home living with me. And so we are, we're going to go together and do a workshop on iPads, and we're going to go to a Japanese institute. So I figured, hey, I'll bring Olivia. She can assist me. So she comes, and we show this video. And then Olivia divulges something that I didn't know. She says to the group, she says, you know what happened is last year I had a Japanese colleague over for dinner, and I'm cooking a meal. And the Japanese colleague comes over and he says, hey, so what are you making? And so Olivia starts to explain the process, the foods, and how she's preparing the food. And the Japanese colleague says, wait a minute, stop. Your Japanese is not that good. In other words, like, how can you speak Japanese so well in cooking where the rest of your Japanese is not that great? And Olivia told her, said, because I remember this assignment. This is the only thing that I remember from my AP course. So I'm constantly running into teachers, and much like me, AP teachers, and saying, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I got to cover things. We got to get through. They got to know it. And my question back to them is, what are they going to remember? It's one thing to cover. It's another thing to engage students in a way that the curriculum content lasts, that they remember it, and in fact, they even want to remember it. So what's that worth? When I asked a lot of teachers, and I asked them about their instructional strategies and their assessment, some day, well, 99% print. Often 90% print. What if you were to take 15, 20%, or just 10% of instructional time to create multiple pathways for students to perform? In other words, to show you what they know and understand. What if, like Sean, you were willing to give them occasionally some latitude and said, yes, explain to me why you want to present it using this modality, whether it be animation, whether it be video, whether it be pen and paper, show me why you want to do this. How will this help me get to know you better? How will this make me better understand what you know about what I'm teaching you? What if we were willing to do 15 to 20%? Would it result in curriculum content mastery, or at least an understanding that's going to last not just till the test, but weeks, months, or even 7 years from now? So how do we build great teachers with technology? There's no simple formula or magic potion that I can give you. But I'll explain to you one framework, and one framework is Someday Monday. Someday is this utopian vision of what we would want students to do with iPads. Understand that the pivotal question is, what can students do with iPads? It is not, how can I teach with iPads? How can I teach with iPads assumes that you control the technology. It assumes that you are the creator. It assumes that you make the critical thinking decisions and you make the choices. So a fun way of thinking about this is pondering this question. What does awesome look like? If kids were doing awesome things with their iPads, what would you imagine? So we start with a utopian vision that might be built over time of what awesome would look like with iPads in the classroom. But to get there, we focus on Monday. Means what are some of the things that teachers could do tomorrow in their iPad classroom that would be like a series of steps, like a pathway on the water, stepping stones. You could step on these stones on the path and get to your ultimate goal. So one way that we structure it is to think of 5 days, 5 weeks, and 5 months. So let's start with a big vision. What is it that you want to do? End of the semester, a year from now, or hey, when students graduate from your school or district, what is it that you want them to be able to do? What would awesome look like? Start with that vision. And then let's start with Monday. Okay, so little activity for you. This is an iPad workshop. You're sitting down. I'm about to get started an iPad workshop. Some of you have never had an iPad before. You're scared of an iPad, perhaps. And I say to you, here you go. Do these 3 things. Often I would have a list of 12 things, and I give you 20 minutes to do them. And you would kind of scratch your head, look at me, and go, Tom, aren't you going to teach me that? No. Tom, I don't know how to do any of these things. You've got 20 minutes. Here's what you can do. You can work with your neighbors. You can help each other. I just have one rule. Can't touch anybody else's iPad. So everybody gets it done in 20 minutes. But here's the real point. These are the first 3 things. Take a picture. Is that easy? Take a screenshot. Relatively easy. Shoot a video. Relatively easy. Okay, so you tell me specifically, how can all of these improve teaching and learning? Great. So often with groups, it's silence, and I just wait. I wait until somebody will say something such as? Pictures, elaborate.
Pictures of work they've been doing in class that is relevant to the content they're trying to get across and learn and master.
Right, so just like those notes in solving how to solve one-step equation, take a picture of your handwritten notes. You could do that. Terrific. Okay, what else?
Record something.
Record what?
Record something interesting.
Yeah, but be specific. We got to build vision. Yes, okay, so you're recording something creative, such as, okay, students are undertaking a science lab. So students could record themselves or you could record them. Now you can take that, you can evaluate the steps because you can't be standing beside them the whole time of the science lab. And also, if it's exemplary work, then you could show it to other students. Or kids could be having a conversation in Spanish. Lots of conversations are going on, you can't hear them all, but they could record the conversation and later on you can evaluate. And if it's a great conversation, maybe you want to show it now to your other Spanish class. Or kids are practicing for a speech. Or kids are solving a math problem and they're recording how they're solving a math problem. We could go on and on and on, and generally in the workshops, this is what we do. We come up with a half dozen, then a dozen, and sometimes 20, 30 examples of how using these 3 things are helpful in both formative and summative assessment, how they can be used as exemplary performances of understanding to show other classes. The point I try to make to them, and I'm trying to make to you, ostensibly this is about iPads, but in reality, it's all about building an educational vision. In other words, if you can take a picture, you can take a screenshot, and you can shoot a movie, but you have no idea how these can help improve teaching and learning, so what? Useless. If you could know every app inside out, know the iPad inside out, and if you have no vision of how this aligns for improving teaching and learning, who cares? So actually, we spend most of our time in a 6-hour workshop on only like 6 apps, just a handful of apps. But we're constantly, how does this improve teaching and learning? How does it align with your vision of teaching and learning? We don't put the proverbial cart before the horse and go, oh, this is a cool app, I like it, I think my kids will like it, I'll use it. I'll go, no, no, no. What is it that I want to do, and how does this app align and help me achieve it? So we spend most of our time kind of like exploring the apps, coming up and reflecting about how they contribute to teaching and learning. But what I often see is teachers spending days, weeks, months going after, let me find those 50 science apps. Or I hear instructional technology specialists, let me show you this app, let me show you this. What we have to be spending most of our time is, what is your vision for teaching and learning? And how can a handful of apps help you develop dozens, if not hundreds, of active learning possibilities for your students? How could you simply, by getting comfortable with a few apps, start to develop instructional practices and a pedagogical framework that would benefit all learners? That is our challenge. So here's a simple example. As part of that warm-up, I have them take a picture of themselves. And I have them go to Padlet.com, not an app, just Padlet.com. And they add a picture of themselves on that wall. They add their name, they add their title. I make them understand I can now collect all sorts of student content and information, because in a Padlet, you can have text, you can put pictures, you can put 30-second videos. So I could have kids in elementary class research all sorts of different tigers, and then I could post the pictures of all the tigers and the information of the tigers all at Padlet.com. So I'm not even starting with an app per se, I'm starting with a web tool, but just pointing out, and the students in my workshops do this in a matter of minutes and go, oh, this is easy, I could do this with kids. Great, so what's your vision? What would you have them do? Oh, well, you know what I would have them do? I would have them learn, they'd have to research flags, and we get all the flags of the different states, and then we could all help each other and learn that. Or, hey, you know, I got a physics class, we're teaching the velocity principle. Kids are going to find videos that demonstrate the velocity principle, and we'll all put them up on that Padlet wall. You see over to the right, that's Socrative, an instant response system. Socrative teacher and Socrative student. If you start with pedagogy, if you start with a vision, then you can start using apps effectively. Here's a vision for you. Tell me if you disagree. The more you know about your students, the better teacher you can become. Anybody disagree with that? So virtually every teacher believes that. So what if kids walk in your class and you know whether they understood the homework? You could find out whether you're teaching in a way that enables learning. You could know how long the homework took them. You could know if they're ready to move on. You could ask them all sorts of questions and get responses instantaneously using an instant response system such as Socrative. And of course, there are others. But with Socrative, I can push out a true-false, and I can ask them, did you understand the homework? And make it anonymous and see the responses immediately. Maybe even before the bell rings, I know whether they understood the homework or not. Or I have a multiple choice. How long did homework take you last night? 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, over an hour. I thought the Communist Manifesto was pretty easy, didn't you? I mean, I thought 10 minutes and easy, and they're all telling me over an hour and hard. So I'm going to change my instructional practice. I'm going to change what I'm going to do right now, that very moment in the class, and better my teaching because I have access to this information instantaneously. Or I stop after I've been trying to explain the proletariat revolution. I stop and I push out an open box and I say, in one sentence, you tell me what you learned in the last 5 minutes. And it didn't take me 15 years of teaching to realize what I teach ain't necessarily what they learn. So I can have a check-in, I can get that information instantaneously. So we start with the vision. Hey, the more I know about my students, what they think, what they know, what they understand, what they feel, and if I could get that information quickly because I can't stop and interview each kid for 10 minutes in the class because I won't have any class time, I will have that one-on-one conversation, but I can't do it all now. But I could collect this information right now, and that can improve my teaching. So there we go. We start with a vision, we start with pedagogy, we choose a tool, and we move in that direction. So what if you did this? What if you used Socrative and Padlet to collect information? What questions would you ask your students that would elicit information to help you better understand them, understand if they have mastered the curriculum content? Maybe you would collect screenshots to evaluate student progress. Think of it this way. The screenshot is one of the most powerful tools for formative assessment. Hey, I could, if this was a class, you're in the back, I'm up here, I don't know what you're doing, but I could say, screenshot it right now and send it to me. Or screenshot it and I'll come look. I could say you have 15 minutes to work on your essay, and at the 5-minute part, I could say, hey, I'd like you to screenshot it. Then I come back in 10 minutes, screenshot it. Screenshot it. I come over and I see the evolution of your thinking and visible progress in the 15 minutes. Maybe you staggered between the 5 and 10-minute mark. Not much was happening. So I can collect I can collect information, data, where I could document, visibly document the thinking, the activity that's going on in a student's work, and also it gives me a window into their brain. I'm not going to do, hey, screenshot every 2 seconds, every kid's. I'm going to be selective and judicious, but I'm going to use it to collect information, to get a whole portfolio of a class, of a week, of a semester, of kids' progress, thinking, or maybe lack thereof. All of that is possible. In 5 weeks, we try to branch them into creativity. And how can we then create opportunities for kids to use multimedia to demonstrate what they know and understand? So you see the bottom left, that's notability. So notability on the surface is a substitution for note-taking. Because with notability, you can underline, you can handwrite, you can type. You can do all these things that you could do with pen and paper, but the big difference is kids can record their voice. So they could be explaining their thinking while they're writing their thesis statement. They could be explaining their thinking while they're solving a math problem, explaining their thinking while they're doing a drawing. Anything that they're working on, they could explain their thinking. And you could explain your thinking and give them directions, context, all sorts of things you could provide to them using the speaker in Notability. Oh, and by the way, you can bring in any web page you want into Notability. So you've given them an assignment on dinosaurs and told them to read something. But you could also add a web page which has a timeline of dinosaurs, has a chart of dinosaurs, has a video of a curator talking about dinosaurs. In other words, if you could bring any information from the internet in the world into your documents, or would want students to do that in their notes, what would that be? In other words, the hard part is not recording your voice in a Notability. The hard part is the vision. What can you do? Because with great power comes great responsibility. Absolutely. So it might be a multimedia book like Book Creator. It might be the Draw and Tell, which is a screencasting app for pre-K to 2. It might be Explain Everything, a screencasting app. But in all, when we sort of look at this and all these things that could be created, all of these apps fit on one screen. There's no reason that any apps should go onto a second screen. So there are all of these active possibilities for kids to do book creators and tours and lab reports and screencasts and flashcards and infographics. All of these things are possible with just a handful of apps, and not one curriculum app, like not one science app, not one history app, or one grade level app, but simply with a group of evergreen apps. For time, I'm going to switch over to this, and I'm going to go here. So here are just a handful of apps that if students, teachers, just had, let's say, a screencasting app for 1 month, they could come up with a multitude of activities and projects. This is not a rule. This evergreen apps, apps that can be used anytime, anywhere, are flexible. But the point is, with a video app, with an audio app, with a screencast app, with a multimedia book app, with an image editing app, with an instant response app, you've got more than enough apps to create and integrate the iPad effectively for years to come. So I'm going to leave you here with some resources going forward, and at the end we'll give you the link to these slides. The most important is your framework for the iPads. What can students do with iPads? What does awesome look like? If that's your framework, then you see the iPad as a portable media creation device. If you think about it as how I can teach with iPads, how I can use the iPads to disseminate information as a replacement for my textbook and my reader, then you're going to see it as solely as a repository of apps, and that will limit your vision and limit your ability to integrate the iPad. So, going forward, resources. This is my book, iPads in the Classroom for Consumption and Curation to Creation. Sorry, it's not free, but it's on iTunes and it's on Amazon. iPads in the Classroom, Consumption and Curation to Creation. This is free. At edtechteacher.org/apps, we have an app selection guide where we can help you choose apps, not necessarily by subject, but what you want students to do. I want students to show their thinking. I want students to create and edit video. I want students to take notes. I want students to do this. I want students to do that. We have a very popular app selection guide that we have rated and reviewed apps to help you do that. And to learn some of these apps, if you go to vimeo.com/edtechteacher, we have about 178 video tutorials, many of them on apps and iPads. These are part of the courses that we run, the online courses that we charge our clients, schools and districts, but we put our videos up for free. So even without taking the courses, you can go to vimeo.com/edtechteacher and you can watch our video tutorials. You can also join us, of course, in the summer workshops, Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, such as the iPad Classroom and the Advanced iPad Classroom and many others. And finally, there you go. That's the URL for today. And with that, I'll say thank you very much and best of luck going forward.